I'm going at 10.
Yep.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We're going right in with the NBA trade deadline. This is the NBA trade deadline special. It's me and Stav. We're getting things kicked off here. It is precisely February 9th at 4:23 p.m. at the time of us recording this. The deadline has been over for an hour and a half. I thought it was at 4 p.m.
Me too.
That was my mistake. It was at 3 p.m. I was watching NBA Live, and they were like, okay, there's 3 minutes left until the trade deadline's over. And I'm like, what? It's like 2:50 right now. But anyways, the trade deadline is officially over. And we have some big news. And I say we get right into it here. The biggest news that we have not broken, obviously we talked about Kyrie moving on from the Nets, but the Nets have let go of their other superstar as well. First off, Stav, I want to get your opinion because this happened late last night. This happened right before I went to bed. Kevin Durant, Phoenix. The Western Conference gets that much stronger. Going a little bit more about the depth of the package and what you think, but for both sides.
Well, to be honest, this is one of the most shocking trades I think I've ever seen in my life. There were words and there was news that KD and the Nets weren't really thinking of moving on from each other, I think the morning of yesterday. And then at 1 o'clock in the morning today, technically, the news broke that KD's going to the Suns. Like, this is one of those trades that is so unbelievable that you just think it's fake. Like, when the news broke, I thought that it was fake. I thought I was getting duped, but no, this is just crazy. And my original raw reaction is, what the hell happened in Brooklyn for all these guys just to want out like this, like crazy? Literally, like, basically from the start of the season until now, how much has changed is ridiculous. I don't think I've seen this much turnover in a roster in 2 years as in any other team ever. I mean, think of it. You start the 2021 season with Kyrie and KD and James Harden. And then, no, you start the season with just Kyrie, KD, and then you acquire James Harden from the Rockets, give up whatever you gave up, and then you trade James Harden the next season for Ben Simmons, a former All-Star, because James Harden didn't work out somehow, whatever. And now you're Kyrie and KD in the offseason. I remember we talked about this every single goddamn week, where they would end up, where KD was going to end up. Was KD going to be a Celtic? And then they stay. They figured it out. They got a new coach. Kyrie and KD basically fired Steve Nash, brought their guy in, took control of the roster. This season hasn't even been terrible for them. Like, they're fourth place in the Eastern Conference. What happened in Brooklyn? I'm very confused. I don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah, and looking back at the roster that they used to have when they were fun, remember when they snuck into the playoffs that year with like guys like D'Lo and Dinwiddie, which is funny because he's back on the team, and you had the bench like getting sturdy courtside at Brooklyn. Like, that team was fun, and D'Lo was leading that team. D'Lo hit his ice in the veins part 2. Of course, part 1 was with the Lakers, but that team was a lot of fun, and they blew up that whole team to acquire superstars and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and James Harden, and they wanted to make a quick shift and go into a quick win now mode. And it just doesn't make sense that you would really let your superstar players give up on the organization in this short of a time frame, because you have a foundation before this. You had guys like D'Angelo Russell, which we'll talk about him soon on this episode as well. And you had these different guys, and I forgot to even mention Jared Allen on that team, who's become a whole different player in Cleveland. You had guys that you could have built up and you could have made a good team around in recent years. Like this year, a team that had D'Lo and Jared Allen on it would be a playoff team. And Dinwiddie's a playoff scorer, a rotational guy. It doesn't make sense, and it's overall maybe one of the biggest fails of a franchise in NBA history.
I think it is the biggest fail. I can't think of another team that failed this miserably ever, that had this high of
quick as
expectations.
well.
Yeah, I mean, the only team that I could compare technically is the 2010 Lakers, or no, I'm sorry, the 2012 Lakers, when they had Steve Nash, Dwight Howard, and Kobe. But that team at least like made the playoffs, and it was a one and done. But Kobe had already he did his thing with LA, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dwight took his team to the finals with the Magic 3 years prior. Steve Nash did his thing with the Suns in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. But this team here failed for completely different reasons. Like that Lakers team, Kobe Bryant ruptured his Achilles mid-season. Dwight Howard didn't really pan out. Steve Nash was old. These guys are technically in their prime. And this just completely failed. I'm talking about Kyrie, James Harden, KD, Ben Simmons, all these guys. And going back to your point, they had a fun, young, exciting team, as we like to say, and they just completely blew it up. They were basically at 1 to 2 pieces away, 1 to 2 core pieces away from actually being very dangerous in the East, because nobody wanted to see that Brooklyn team come playoff time. That team, when they got hot, was dangerous. No one could stop them. They had guys like you said, D'Angelo Russell, Jared Allen, Karis LeVert. They had these pieces. They completely blew it up in effort to win literally right now. They did not learn from their past history when they tried to win right now with the Celtics, and they tried to fleece them and got KG. They got Paul Pierce, Jason Terry. They put Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, Brooke Lopez all together. That didn't work out, but at least it wasn't as much of a failure as this experiment was. But they never learned.
Yeah, but the thing is, in return, this team gets a lot younger. You know, they still have Ben Simmons on that roster, which I think he'll be gone in the offseason. You have guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, who came back to the team. You have Dorian Finney-Smith, who's a rotational guy. Cam Johnson, young. Mikal Bridges, young. And this is Mikal Bridges' chance to not necessarily lead a team, but I don't know who else I would say is better than him on that team. Maybe Nick Claxton with the way he's playing. Cam Thomas, if he emerges after 40 balls 3 times in a row, if he just keeps dropping 40 a game, maybe. But this is Mikal Bridges' chance, and Mikal Bridges is a good young player. They have good young players around him in a starting lineup of, I mean, it's like, it's not a championship roster. It's maybe not even a playoff roster, but if you like to watch like young players go out and play basketball, a lineup of Cam Thomas, who's a rookie, Spencer Dinwiddie, who's always fun to watch, Mikal Bridges, same, and he's young too. You have Dorian Finney-Smith at the 4, Ben Simmons at the 4, and Nick Claxton, who's young, and I mean, we were talking about him being all defensive first team the past couple of weeks. They kind of have shifted back to a young, fun, exciting team. It's just they could have been like that the whole time, and they would have progressed from there. They're kind of back to square one. But in terms of going back to square one, if you absolutely have to do it, I don't think that they did that bad of a job acquiring pieces, acquiring youth, and acquiring future assets and picks. They got 4 first-round picks for Kevin Durant, which is obviously the package that you should expect. But 4 first-round picks goes a long way.
100%. And they did it while they had the chance to, because you never know what was going to happen with Kyrie in the offseason. And we talked about that last episode. And you never necessarily knew what would happen with KD if Kyrie decided to leave. So at least they got the maximum value that they did. And they got some young pieces in return too. So they maximized their opportunity in return for those 2 guys. But with that being said, Ben Simmons, what the hell? What's going to happen with him? Is he now their guy, or is he just going to be like benched for the rest of the season? Because there's no direction with Ben Simmons, and it's unfortunate because he's another prime example. I've never seen someone who was basically at the top of the NBA world, right? Winning Rookie of the Year, getting all defensive nod, all these things, being the star of the 76ers, him and Joel Embiid. That one playoff series against the Atlanta Hawks, he just fell off. He completely fell off. He's never been the same since then. And I don't think we'll ever see that Ben Simmons ever again. I mean, if there's a time, let me rephrase that. If there's a time for Ben Simmons to return to his former self, now's the time, because no one's going to be watching the Nets. I'm sorry, the Nets are basically a play-in team at best, in my opinion. Maybe if they get really hot at the right time, because they already have a good record right now. Maybe they can
Yeah,
be the 6th
exactly.
seed.
Yeah.
But Ben Simmons, dude, now's your time to prove that you deserve.
Nice.
It's not
Now's the time you need to prove that you are an NBA player and can compete at the highest level, because you are technically on paper the best player on this Nets team.
Yeah, and you're right. And you brought up the question of whether you would think Ben Simmons steps up, and you're right. This is the perfect opportunity to. But if we're playing this of two different scenarios, what do you think is more likely to happen? I would take the other route. I think that he would be benched for the rest of the season, kind of like a little holdout, like Jay Crowder did, and we'll talk about Jay Crowder too soon. Ben Simmons is going to be on the move in the offseason, I think, no matter what. This is a good chance for him to kind of raise his stock. But I don't even know if he'll play. I don't think that he has the confidence to play basketball at this moment. Too many things have affected him in terms of his scoring. It's led to him not even shooting the ball this past year. And everybody knows the clip from the 76ers in the playoffs when he had the wide open dunk. He gave it up. It's been like that the whole season. Like, he's not mentally he has the Y word. That's a word that we don't like to say out loud, but I'm going to say it. He has the yips. He has the basketball yips. He just cannot do what he could once do. So I would much rather think that he would rather sit out for a season than go out, give it his all, and try to raise his stock, because I don't think that he can.
No, I agree. I mean, it's unfortunate to see, but I want to hear your take on the opposite side of this trade. Right? We just spent the last 10 minutes talking about Brooklyn. Now let's talk about the Western Conference favorites as of right now, the Phoenix Suns, and how much better they just got their starting five. You have a starting five and fully healthy of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, TJ Warren, and DeAndre Ayton. That's a ridiculous starting five. Now, my question for this, or for you right now, is this team deep enough to make a playoff run?
This team is top heavy. This team is very top heavy, and they're probably the best starting five on roster in the NBA. And the issue is they have the best starting four. You mentioned TJ Warren in that starting five. Any starting five that has TJ Warren, you wouldn't guess would be an NBA favorite. And they don't have anybody else that they could fit into that five. You could put Josh Okogie at like maybe the 2, Booker at the 3, Kevin Durant at the 4. It's not a good look for them once the bench squad comes out. One out of those 3 guys, I would say, in Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Ayton have to be on the court at all time throughout the rest of the season, because it's not like they're in a fantastic place. I mean, they're definitely not where they want to be in terms of record and in terms of playoff position. So it's a long route from here, with just the fact that you get a superstar, you give up guys like Cam Johnson, like Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, even though he was holding out. You give up a bunch of picks, and this is what the team is going to look like for a couple of years now. You're going to have these guys rotating in and out off the bench squad. You're not going to have any form of stability. And when has that ever really worked out in the NBA? It really hasn't. When a bench isn't deep, and we talk about it a lot in college basketball, I believe the same thing in the NBA. When you don't have 8, 9, maybe even 10 guys for some teams, the Boston Celtics, for example, I'm not too confident in you in the long run, because once it gets to the postseason, it's night in and night out. You have to perform. You're not going to be 100% health. And when TJ Warren's your starting power forward, that puts a lot of pressure on the 4 guys on the court for the whole entire game. I don't like the Phoenix Suns to win the championship. I think that they have 3 great players, 1 player that used to be great in Chris Paul, and I just don't think that once it gets down to it, they don't have a backup center that could be anybody. I think they have the worst backup center in Jock Lindell in the National Basketball Association.
What about Bismack Biyombo?
Bismack Biyombo got like 10 boards in the first round of like the 2018 playoffs for the Toronto Raptors and got like $50 million. He's 6'6" and he stinks.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's I know how good KD is, right? That goes without question.
He's the greatest scorer of all time.
Yes. Chris Paul has fallen off of a cliff. He's not the same Chris Paul. I don't want to hear that he's the same Chris Paul. Last year, and it's proven to be up to this point this year as well, he's not the same guy. And Devin Booker, he's yet to prove it on his own, right? And is he willing for the first time in his career to take the back seat to Kevin Durant? Because, and you got to think too, he might be even the third guy on this team to touch the ball, because Chris Paul is going to be he's going to have a majority of the usage rate, right? Because he's going to be facilitating, he's going to be in charge of the offense. That's a given. And then Kevin Durant's going to be his first pass. And now whether the ball gets to Devin Booker is a whole other question. Who knows how much of an impact this has on Devin Booker and his development throughout his career? If this is a horrible failure, where does this Suns team go from there? Because I hate to bring up being negative, but that's not really too far-fetched anymore. If this team horribly fails, if they lose in the first round, what happens? Chris Paul is gone, in my opinion. And then there's a feud probably between Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. And DeAndre Ayton's gone too.
DeAndre Ayton, I was going to say, is out the door. DeAndre Ayton, it was a surprise that he was even back with Phoenix. And now you get rid of his best friend in Mikal Bridges, probably one of the main reasons why he came back. That was one of the best friendships it looked like in the NBA. And now he's gone. DeAndre Ayton could go to the Nets. And the Nets could be a pretty dang good team with a team that has DeAndre Ayton and Nick Claxton in the backcourt. Not a lot of shooting, obviously, but just a hypothetical for this for this next offseason, because I don't think this team's going to work out. And I could see Devin Booker leaving this team with with Kevin Durant still on his contract. Devin Booker, it's easier to move him than it is for Kevin Durant at this point because of age. You know, people are going to want Booker. They're going to give him big deals. They're going to give him a lot. And Chris Paul at this point, this is his last chance. This season, if not this season, the next season are his last two chances. I don't like the direction of this Phoenix Suns team. You get a lot better in Kevin Durant on paper, but there's 48 minutes in a basketball game and 4 guys can't beat 5 guys on the court. So
no, exactly.
It's a very tough look. It's a very tough look.
The Western Conference is very stacked. Like the Mavs, we know who the Mavs are now. Kyrie played his first game for Dallas the other night, had 24 points, played a good game. The Golden State Warriors are going to come back and they're going to be good in the playoffs. Memphis Grizzlies are on the come up. Denver Nuggets have MVP Nikola Jokic. The Lakers got a lot better. We'll get to them. So by no means, the odds jumped crazy for the Phoenix Suns. I wish I could fade them. I wish there was a way to fade that the Phoenix Suns would not make the NBA Finals. I would totally take that. I don't even think they'll make it past the second round, if I'm being honest. I think that
there's a lot of those teams at this moment where when I think of a team and the Phoenix Suns is now the definition of them, I think of the Western Conference semifinals. I think of that. I think of the Jazz, or not the Jazz, but the Grizzlies. Excuse me. I think of the Mavericks as well. So. Yeah. That's my little category. Those 3 teams right there, I think, are kind of in similar positions.
No, 100%. And a lot of teams are just kind of in a weird middle ground that they're not really excelling right now. But in a 7-game series, I wouldn't be surprised if they upset the Phoenix Suns. Right? So, I'm going to look at the standings right now, just off the top of my head in the Western Conference, because it's really a cluster. Let's go Western Conference standings. You have Denver in first, then Memphis, Sacramento, Dallas, Phoenix, Clippers, right? And then in the play-in game, you have the Pelicans, Timberwolves, Warriors, and Trailblazers. The Trailblazers got better as well. The Trailblazers very well could sneak into a top 6 spot. The Warriors, I think, will. And the Kings are playing very good basketball right now. So you're telling me right now that the Phoenix Suns, sitting at 30-26 with the thinnest roster probably in the Western Conference, I don't think that they'll make the jump.
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't. I mean, I don't work in Vegas for this reason. I don't see the hype around it. I know how good Kevin Durant is, but if the Nets weren't favorites to win the East, if the Nets weren't favored to win the finals then why are the Suns?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think
No, I
that
agree. I was thinking the same thing. I would compare this team right now to the Nets team with James Harden.
and this team has no defense.
Yeah, zero defense. Zero defense in the Western Conference now between the teams with Kyrie and KD.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a big shakeup. It's a big shakeup in the league.
I kind of want to skip over. I mean, we'll briefly touch upon this. The Warriors traded James Wiseman. He
For
didn't
Gary
really.
Payton Jr.
Yeah, they got him back. So that's a decent move, I guess. Gary Payton's a good player for the Warriors. He gave the Celtics fits in the finals.
Yep.
Tough guy. Obviously, you know what he brings to the table. Maybe that's what this Warriors team needs. I don't mind that move at all, especially because James Wiseman hasn't done anything. He hasn't done anything.
Locker room guy. Been on the team before. Locker room guy.
Yep.
It's a good move for the Warriors. But yeah, I don't have too much to say about that.
Yeah. But I want to talk about the Clippers. The Clippers went out and made some moves. Bones Highland and Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon's returning to the Clippers. He played there with Chris Paul back in the day, right? Or am I mistaken?
Yes.
I could be completely whatever. But Bones Highland, this Clippers team, I love this Clippers team, to be honest. I think this team, if I'm in the West, scares me. Because you have your starting point guard of Bones Highland, probably, because Reggie Jackson just got traded.
Yep. Or Terrence Mann has been pretty good this year.
You have Kawhi, Paul George, Zubac, Eric Gordon. You have Marcus Morris.
Wait. Don't forget about
Norman Powell,
the premier trade deadline piece that everybody wanted this deadline, Mason Plumlee.
Oh, he got traded there?
Mason Plumlee is on the Clippers now.
Oh,
Mason Plumlee, who I've been betting the over in every single stat category, every single night he has played for the Hornets, who has been outperforming for the Hornets, is now on the Clippers, and that is such a good move for depth. You now have two solid, in my opinion, starting centers in the Western Conference in Ivica Zubac and Mason Plumlee. Obviously not the best players on your team, because you have the best players on your team on the wing and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. You have guys that are going to get them rebounds now. They're not going to eat up too much of that scoring, but they're both good defensive pieces. Mason Plumlee is a god on the board. Ivica Zubac plays good defense. You have Marcus Morris there still, Nick Batum there still, who gets quality minutes. You had shooting in Eric Gordon. You let go of a piece in Luke Kennard, but you get him back. You get that shooting back, and you get a veteran presence back who will probably be awesome on the court with Bones Highland. Eric Gordon and Bones Highland coming off the bench, being that backcourt with Norman Powell on that team as well. That team got much deeper. They still have Rocco. They have a lot of names on this team. Brandon Boston Jr., who's a young kid. I mean, this is a very deep team, and they've been underperforming for a few years, stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that now is the time that they're going to put it together. I think they're a very well-coached team. And I like them out of the West, to be honest. If they put a run together with this new roster that they have, not a new roster, but with the new acquisitions, this is a very scrappy team that I would not want to see, right? Because they have an attitude and they want to win. You can tell Paul George is at that point in his career where he just needs to win. And Kawhi Leonard, he's a robot. When he plays, I think Kawhi Leonard's up to the top of the league for best players. You're well coached, and you got guys who are at the point in their career where they've made their money. Now it's time to win. Like, I look at guys Robert Covington's still there. He didn't get moved, right?
Yeah, Rocco's still there.
Yeah, you have guys like Rocco. You have Norman Powell, who's been on a championship team. These guys just want to keep winning, right? Norman Powell is a guy who no one really talks about, I think, as how much he's improved this year. I mean, Norman Powell this season, he's averaging almost 17 points a game, and he 3 rebounds, almost 2 assists, and he's shooting almost 50% from the field. He's playing well. So this team in the playoffs is a team I would not want to see, especially when you're a team like Dallas or Phoenix, where this like we brought up the Clippers last episode too when we talked about Dallas. No one can guard anyone on that team in Dallas. And now you look at the Clippers versus the Suns, and the Clippers are way more deep. the Clippers can in a 7-game series. I don't think that the Suns will be able to
No
keep
doubt.
up this Clippers team.
Because what advantage do the Suns hold? Obviously, there's KD, but KD is going to be guarded by
Kawhi or Paul George.
And then whoever isn't guarding KD is going to be guarding not Ben Simmons. Devin Booker, an actual all-star. And then it doesn't matter who guards Chris Paul, because if Chris Paul kills you, if Chris Paul is the best player on the court that night, you're winning the game by 30. So you can talk about DeAndre Ayton, but that goes into my point where I think having a two-headed front court of Ivica Zubac and Mason Plumlee, obviously the both of them aren't better than DeAndre Ayton, but if anybody's ever watched Moneyball, it's as simple as that. 2 beats 1 in this situation. They're going to be in a steady rotation. Those are 2 starting centers right there. They'll be rotating in and out. They'll have fresh legs, and they'll be able to run the distance against a team that would be led by DeAndre Ayton. The Clippers have every single thing that they need locked up on the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. They have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, who can both guard a point guard to power forward. And then they have 3 more players on the starting lineup and 2 starting centers. One of them, my guess, Mason Plumlee, will be coming off the bench, and that will be just because of how good this team is. It's a very good team.
Well, see, while we say this, I guess you have to take it with a grain of salt, because it's been the same conversation with the Los Angeles Clippers for the last few years, ever since they made the moves to get Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. It's just they've been failing to exceed expectations or meet expectations at that. So I just want this Clippers team to put it together, and I think they are in a perfect scenario to do it, because they are way more deep than when I look at these Western Conference standings. I think that they're probably a top 3 most deep team in the Western Conference.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree.
All right. Next trade we can talk about briefly. Jay Crowder landed with the Bucks after the Bucks gave up 5 second-round picks. That was a common theme today. Team just shelling out 5
lot of second-rounders.
Yeah.
A lot of second-rounders given out today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily understand that, but I mean,
the Warriors got like 5 second-rounders in the trade today.
Yeah.
I think that was the Wiseman trade too.
And the Nets got 5 second-rounders for Jay Crowder.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, so it's like I don't
from Milwaukee.
I mean, it kind of it refers back to the theme that like NBA teams have way too much young talent just to be sitting on the bench, and young talent doesn't want to sit on the bench, so they don't care about their picks anymore, right? Like we talk about guys like Peyton Pritchard, Cam Reddish. I mean, those are just the 2 names that come to the top of my head, where it's like these guys are great players, but are just rotting away on the bench essentially.
Bones Highland, I would throw in there.
Yeah.
I mean, even Cole Anthony gets quality minutes for Orlando, but not as many as he should. With Jalen Suggs there too, was another guy on that list. You have guys like Cam Johnson, who just got moved.
Malachi Flynn on the Raptors.
Yes, that's a good one. You're right. There's a lot of these young guys, and it comes up to the topic of expansion in the NBA, in my opinion, just with how much talent is out there. There's a lot of guys overseas right now that could be wearing NBA jerseys, and there's a lot of guys in the G League that could be wearing NBA jerseys, and there's a lot of guys sitting on the bench that could be getting quality minutes for NBA teams too. I mean, obviously, we're not going to be talking about expansion on this episode, but there's a lot of quality guys out there that aren't getting minutes.
100%. I mean, I think that you could add probably 2 teams in the NBA.
Agreed.
And the talent,
and they'd be all right. They'd be all right. Be all right. But obviously, just Jay Crowder, Milwaukee. I think that's a good move. Jay Crowder held out all season. He wasn't playing until he got moved, so he got what he wanted. Shout out to him. But I do want to talk real quick again about the Lakers today. Moving on from Pat Bev, sending him to the Magic, which sucks to be Pat Bev. They get Mo Bamba in return. They gave up Thomas Bryant earlier in the day. Mo Bamba, who, if you asked Will, isn't a real human being, is probably going to be the starting center for this team.
Well, Anthony Davis, too. I doubt that they would run both.
I think AD at the 4 and him at the 5, LeBron at the 3. And then D'Lo at the...
Yeah, that would make sense.
And then literally anybody at the 2, because they don't have many other options.
I mean, this Lakers team got better. I don't think that this is a championship roster by any means, but when you roll out a starting five, probably D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, LeBron,
Yeah.
AD, and Mo
And then
Bamba.
maybe you might be right. You might throw Rui Hachimura at the 4, AD at the 5, and let Mo Bamba come off the bench.
Yeah. Or, I mean, you got Jared Vanderbilt, too, who's going to come off the bench for them. Lonnie
Yeah, and that's a
Walker.
quality guy. They got a lot. They got some
better.
pieces, and I think they let go of Russell Westbrook as well, who's now on the Jazz.
Jazz right now, he's probably going to get bought out.
Yeah, that would be my guess as well. But you get rid of a guy like that who you could say, I mean, was one of the best players on their team, and I would argue that as well, even though coming off the bench. That's a guy that needs to lead a team. So if he has to lead off the bench and be like that number one option on the bench crew, I think that he would do pretty good at being that. I think Russell Westbrook would be a great 6-man on an NBA team. It didn't work out here, though. And to give him up, they got a lot of pieces in return. They moved on from a lot of these different guys that weren't working, like him, like Thomas Bryant, like Pat Bev, who they only had for like 3 or 4 months. And they get guys like Malik Beasley, who's probably going to be a starter for them. Rui Hachimura, obviously, a week ago. Jared Vanderbilt, as you said, Mo Bamba as well. These are just different faces in the locker room. And I love the addition of Malik Beasley. I think that he's a great 2-guard, great defensive guy, can shoot the 3 ball as well. They got a bit better in the shooting category with D'Lo at point guard. And D'Lo is going to be a true, very good point guard to match up with LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I mean, we're forgetting about Austin Reeves coming back from injury as well. This team's deeper than the Phoenix Suns, in my opinion. I think if you go 1 through 10, the Lakers roster is better than Phoenix. And
Phoenix, definitely.
I mean, Phoenix is favored to that.
I don't know why I was thinking you were trying to put that up with the Clippers. I was like,
no,
that's why I was kind of shocked. But no, but in terms of Phoenix, I'd say, yeah. I mean, I was almost going to say the starting 5 might be better, but obviously it's not because they have 4 just so powerful teams. But if you put up, because I mean, the Phoenix Suns would kill to have Malik Beasley on their team. They'd kill to have Rui Hachimura on their team.
They'd kill to have
Jared Vanderbilt on their team.
D'Angelo Russell. Because Chris Paul isn't reliable right now. He's always injured. So, I don't. In a 7-game series, I'm going to take the Lakers, to be honest.
I'm going to take the Lakers.
I don't. I mean, unless KD just pulls some magic out of him, I don't. This Lakers team's a lot more deep, and I don't think the conversation of how bad the depth is for the Phoenix Suns. I mean, we went on a 20-minute rant about it before, but
yeah,
still, I mean, teams got deeper in the Western Conference, and we'll talk about the East soon as well. Teams got deeper, and teams who were supposed to sell at the deadline didn't touch their roster, which is interesting. We'll talk. I kind of want to talk about certain teams at the end too that we didn't touch upon, but some teams are stuck in no man's land, and as Celtics fans, it's beautiful to see.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I feel like the Western Conference got a lot stronger. And I feel like the majority of teams we've been talking about have been the Western Conference. Like Jay Crowder obviously went to Milwaukee. That's a good deal for Milwaukee. But the Lakers got stronger. The 76ers got weaker, and the Blazers got stronger. They gave up Matisse Thybulle, and they got Jalen McDaniels, who I absolutely hate. I hate Jalen McDaniels from Charlotte in that 3-team trade. The Knicks got Josh Hart, but I don't think I'll ever be like scared of the New York Knicks. Jakob Poeltl goes to the Raptors, just like a few of these different things. Like those moves, I wish Jakob Poeltl, first off, Jakob Poeltl is a great player. I wish he was a Celtic, and I actually thought we had the chance to get him. But him going to the Raptors really does nothing for that team. They have a bunch of young guys who are on expiring deals. Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, who everybody thought was going to be moved. People like that, they just don't really have like the star power to get it done in the playoffs. They're going to be a fringe play-in team, and they go out, they get Poeltl to maybe get younger and try to build those guys around. But there's a lot of people that need to be paid in Toronto. So in my opinion, Toronto got weaker. I think the only team that really got stronger was Milwaukee, and they didn't get much stronger. You know, they got Jay Crowder. I'm still confident about the Boston Celtics in the East by, I mean, maybe even more confident than I was yesterday.
I agree. And I mean, there was some, I was genuinely a little bit worried about where OG Anunoby would go.
Yeah.
And he ended up just staying in Toronto, and Toronto's a joke. I'm sorry, but the Toronto Raptors, I think Nick Nurse should be fired. They have talent on that team, and they're just failing. No one's talking about how bad the Raptors are and how bad they've been ever since they won the championship. They're a joke, and they should have made a few deals today to improve their future. I'm sorry, Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet are six mans on better teams.
Yeah, especially Fred VanVleet. Actually, you're right. Both of them. I think Spinny P stinks.
Yeah.
Good defensive player, but when he overperforms in like primetime games, he gets a lot of hype that he doesn't really deserve. People want him as like DPOY, as all defensive first team. It's like, no, and then he doesn't do anything on offense. That team is at a complete standstill. I've really never believed in Fred VanVleet. Kyle Lowry, in my opinion, was the better point guard on that team. They got rid of him, obviously, because of VanVleet's youthness, and it hasn't worked, and it's going to continue to not work. And the Raptors, you're right, are a complete joke. They have absolutely no chance of doing anything in the Eastern Conference. But like I'm honestly just hovering over the logos of the teams right now in the Eastern Conference, and I don't see a single team that I'm really nervous about for the Boston Celtics out of the East. Like Milwaukee's obviously the 2 seed, and I like our chances against Milwaukee this year.
The only two teams I'm going to give my two teams right now, Milwaukee and Cleveland. Those are the only two teams that I can see giving the Celtics some problems. But when it comes down to a 7-game playoff series, who has the experience, really? I mean, Milwaukee, we've taken care of them. But Cleveland, I don't think they're experienced enough to actually make a run.
Yeah.
But
Mitchell's made a run or two, but other than that, you're right.
Yeah, but at the same time, he never really the last time he made it out of the first round was his rookie year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Donovan Mitchell's a great player. Don't get me wrong. I love Donovan Mitchell. But the rest of that team hasn't done anything. They haven't made it out of the first round. They haven't made it out. They haven't made the playoffs and made a run since LeBron was there. So I don't know. I don't think that when I say I'm worried about Cleveland, I take it with a grain of salt. But I have a personal gripe with the Toronto Raptors, especially with their fans. So I'm very happy to see them fall. This started last year. I don't know if you remember. It was an irrelevant game. It was like the Celtics on like a Monday night went to Toronto when Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Rob Williams, nobody played. And we took them to overtime, and they beat us by 2. And then Raptors fans were all over Twitter saying how good this team was. And I'm like, do you guys not realize we didn't have our starting 5? And you guys almost lost to us at home when this was a must-win game for you. You guys are celebrating like you won the chip. Like, oh my God, those spoiled idiots. Like, they're so stupid in Toronto. They're so fucking stupid.
Toronto fans are a bit delusional because
they probably look at this roster and think that they're going to make a championship because they acquired Jakob Poeltl, even though they had him like 2 years ago.
They literally had Jakob Poeltl a couple of years ago, and like I feel like the year that they had with Kawhi, they just like haven't gotten out of that phase yet, where they still think that they're like competing year in and year out. It's like, no, Kawhi was literally your whole team that year, and he left after 1 year. So like, Kawhi just had to. First off, one of the greatest seasons in NBA history was that Kawhi season, but
one of the best playoff runs of all time.
Yeah, but I mean, Toronto fans just are still in that honeymoon phase of the championship where it's like, we still have our core. No, you don't. Fred VanVleet's not your core. Your core was literally just Kawhi Leonard.
And they think Scotty Barnes is the second coming of Jesus. I'm sorry, he's another guy who would be coming off the bench on most teams in the East. What does he do? Like, I'm sorry. I watch basketball, right? He's a 4th overall pick in 2021. What the fuck does he excel at? When I watch him, all he does is brick shots. He just pulls up and spins from mid-range and misses shots. He averages 15 a game, and the Raptors think that he should be an all-star starter. That's why I hate fans in Toronto. Have fun in the play-in game and have fun getting your ass kicked as the 10th seed. You don't even have a home play-in game. We're not in the same level. We're not in the same stratosphere. We're on fucking moon. You guys are down in Detroit. Shut the fuck up, Toronto. All right, next team. We have the Blazers getting Matisse Thybulle from the 76ers. whatever. Right?
Cool.
76ers should blow it up too. They fucking suck. They think they're in the same stratosphere as the Celtics. They're not. We didn't have 4 of our 5 starters against them. They were fully healthy, and we kicked their fucking ass. I don't want to hear anything about Philly. 3 seed? Okay, congrats on the Mickey Mouse 3 seed. You guys haven't made a conference championship since Allen Iverson. So I don't want to hear it. You guys this game was never in doubt either, if I'm being honest. The Celtics had this game all throughout, and Jaylen Brown had a fucking broken face. We didn't have 2 of our starting centers. You let Blake Griffin torch you. You let Derek White look like Defensive Player of the Year. Malcolm Brogdon put up 19, and Jason Tatum had a terrible night. He played fucking awful. And Joel Embiid and James Harden, oh my God, don't get me started on those guys. Those guys do not play basketball. Those guys just try and draw fouls all game. That's all they do, right? Like, I remember a specific play. James Harden got by his defender, had his right-handed layup, easy too. He stepped back and tried to get a contact layup because he can't finish with his right hand. What NBA player cannot finish with the right hand? And Joel Embiid, are you the MVP? Fuck no. You had Grant Williams on you all night, and you had 8 points in the fourth quarter. You did nothing in the second half. Shut the fuck up, Philly. Get out of here. All right.
Shout out Philly Super Bowl special coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, the Eagles are a good team. I like the Eagles.
So I guess I mean we're recording that later today. I'm guessing that you just had to get that one out.
Oh, I have a few more rants like upcoming.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, take me to the next one.
Yeah. Well, that's coming in football. So
Okay. Fair.
Special.
Yes, definitely. But I mean, the trade deadline is over. Overall, the trade deadline, I heard a lot of people saying with the play, and a lot of teams are, a lot of those teams that are hanging around 10, 11, 12 aren't willing to give up these pieces because they think that they can get into the play-in. And if you get into the play-in, you get into the playoffs, and obviously every team wants to be in the playoffs if you're not tanking. A lot of people are saying that the trade deadline is fading. And not a lot of teams are willing to move on from people in the middle of the season.
Yeah,
I would say there was a great deal of moves this season, but overall, I mean, where's your stance on that?
It was chaotic.
I mean, KD can move, Kyrie again. When you blow up a whole NBA team, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, especially one of the teams that had really high expectations as well. I think the Nets were top 5 in championship favorites going into the season. Yeah. And I mean, as we speak right now, they sit 5th in the Eastern Conference. This season wasn't over by far because Philadelphia fucking sucks. They could have easily moved up. So, I kind of want to talk about other teams too. I mean, we talk about all these moves, but some teams didn't make any moves at all. Like I look at this Miami Heat team. They're sitting at the 6th seed right now at 30-25, a half a game out of the play-in game right now, in which I expect them to end up being a 7th seed ceiling, as I stated before the season started. But this Miami Heat team, or are they just going to buy out Kyle Lowry? They could have shipped off Kyle Lowry. They could have shipped off Duncan Robinson. They could have made some moves to actually make some strides in the Eastern Conference, especially because the Eastern Conference right now is just going to run through Milwaukee or Boston. So Miami, Pat Riley, you old fuck, congratulations. You didn't do anything. You fell asleep at the deadline, did fucking jack shit, and literally wasted the season. You signed Tyler Hero to a great extension. Good job. He's playing okay. What's he averaging? 17 points a game. Not an all-star. Bam Adebayo is your best player. You're not getting him any goddamn help either. Jimmy Butler's all he cares about is a picture on ESPN. So this team is irrelevant. Congrats on taking the Celtics to 7 games and losing at home. That's it. Congrats, Miami. You suck. You did nothing. You should have gotten OG Anunoby. You should have gotten some of these other pieces to help out your stars, your young stars, and you did nothing. That pisses me off. Nothing pisses me off more than a team that has potential to make a run, has experience, and they just sit and be patient at the deadline with their mid-fucking roster right now. First round exits. Bye.
Now, Stav, we've covered a lot of these Eastern Conference teams now. A lot of rants in the past 5-10 minutes, but one team that we haven't talked about, surprisingly, is obviously our favorite team, the Boston Celtics, who made one minor move today for Mike Muscala, the Moose. We gave up Justin Jackson, UNC alum. Shout out Jay Jackson, UNC hero. I just want to add, but that's probably the last time I'll probably ever talk about him for the rest of my life. Mike Muscala is kind of like a Luke Cornett, kind of like an Al Horford. Do you see him getting in the rotation? Like not for the playoffs, obviously, right now, but just in the near future. Do you see him kind of getting more minutes with the role of our team? He can fit into Cornette's role. He can fit into Horford's role. Do you think that he actually has the skill level to do it, though?
I think he can crack the rotation, if I'm being honest, and especially when we're going to look at the last few months of the season. Al Horford and Rob Williams, you can't count on them every day, especially in the regular season. So I think that when rest days come and when days like yesterday, when you're starting Blake Griffin at the 5 against a team that has an MVP center, my ass. But Mike Muscala is probably going to fit into that Blake Griffin type role, but I expect him to play a little bit more than what we see Blake Griffin doing because he's a stretch 5. He can knock down shots, and it wouldn't surprise me if he actually cracked the rotation as a ninth man, as a second big off the bench, because Cornette's playing okay, but offensively he's kind of struggling. So Mike Muscala is more of a threat offensively than Luke Cornett. So
Okay,
in my
that's fair,
opinion, at least.
and I would agree, and especially with the injuries that have gone on, he will take a few minutes off of Luke Cornett's shoulders through this next little rough patch, and Al Horford's shoulders as well once he comes back. And he's a guy that in 2 of his last games, he scored 16 points and he scored 19 points, and he's hitting the 3 ball pretty good, and he's cracking the rotation for the Thunder through the thick of the season, and he's not doing too bad. And he's putting up some points here and there. He's putting up some stats here and there, and he's doing his thing. So, I mean, we didn't give Justin Jackson any minutes. I feel like this trade is more of a null trade. If anything, we win the trade because if he gets a few minutes here and there, it'll be overall a good thing. But the Boston Celtics, who maybe they look into the buyout market, but there won't be a ton of players in there, looks like they're standing still, and for a good reason. They're the best team in the NBA. They have Danilo Gallinari potentially joining the team by the end of the season. Um, that's I mean, that's a free agency pickup at the end of the season. We haven't seen him play at all. That's another forward right there, another big that can shoot the ball, that can stretch the court out, and that can play some pretty good defense against power forwards. So I'm not really too scared of the Celtics, especially once they get back to full strength. We saw Jaylen Brown go down yesterday, getting elbowed accidentally by Jason Tatum. Marcus Smart's been out for about a week now. Al Horford didn't play last night. Rob Will didn't play last night. So yeah, I mean, still we're out around the halfway point of this season, and this is when the season gets very interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And kind of to wrap up the deadline aspect, you know who I feel bad for? The like teams like the Orlando Magic. Like, how do you tank for 10 plus years and just not make any ground? Like, how many first round picks are you going to have to make and then trade them for more first round picks just to continue to be mid? Like, I don't know. Congrats to the Magic on getting picks from Mo Bamba, but that was you're just going to end up drafting another Mo Bamba who you're going to trade for picks. So I don't know. I feel like they're kind of in an endless loop of mid. Same thing with the Detroit Pistons. How many first overall picks did you have until you actually make some decent strides? I mean, Cade Cunningham's been out for the entire year, so that's an excuse for them. But you figure with all their first round picks that they've acquired over the past few years and made, that they would be better, but they're just a joke of a franchise. So when we talk about expansion in the NBA, I don't know, that it just kind of got me thinking. Now you got teams like the Spurs, Rockets, the Pistons,
the Rockets are a
Hornets.
dumpster fire.
Yeah. So it's like, are we really going to expand when you got teams that are 13 and 42 and can barely make ends meet right now? So I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's always up for debate, and obviously there isn't 32 teams in the NBA yet. It would be crazy if there was, but that's a topic for another day. This was the NBA trade deadline special. I messed it up. Dang it.
Yep.
But no, for real, we hope you guys enjoyed this one. This is a YouTube exclusive. So if you're checking out the YouTube, we appreciate you guys.
Yep. A YouTube exclusive rant too. I think that's one of my biggest rants.
Yeah, needed it. Needed something to happen today. Trade deadline, always a special day. Stay tuned if you guys like football, which I know everybody does. Super Bowl special coming up next. coming up tomorrow, Friday. So stay tuned. Be ready. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on Apple. It'll be on Spotify. It'll be on every single thing that you could possibly imagine. iHeartRadio. So yeah, appreciate you guys. We will catch you guys later.
Peace.